So this is work I did in conjunction with the Public Policy Institute of California, which is a think tank, I would say, more engaged than most academics are in state policymaking, context with state policymakers and the like. I have been interested in a number of projects and in a number of years in job creation policies, enterprise zones, a California-specific hiring subsidy, and others. This project is different. We're not evaluating a program, kind of the traditional labor economics or public finance study. Rather, we wanted to take stock of all the things that we would classify California, at least as doing as direct job creation policies. Whether subsidies or loans or grants or a few other training programs we think are really about trying to create new jobs, and wanted to get a sense of what's the evidence base? How much is what are the programs? How much is the state spending? Where is there evidence? Where isn't there evidence? We knew there was evidence on a couple of these programs because I had done some of the studies, but really didn't know going in kind of the share of programs and perhaps more importantly, the share of dollars where policymakers had some basis for actually thinking a program worked, where perhaps in contrast, we knew the program didn't work and we're still spending money, or as turned out to be most often the case, we just don't know. So we used kind of eclectic approach. We're not analyzing a particular program with data on that program. So the steps were the following. We first did a rather extensive search in a lot of different directions using a lot of different methods to try to identify what programs we ought to think about as job creation programs. There's a line you got to draw somewhere, right? Obviously, a hiring subsidy is a job creation program. That's pretty easy. Is funding higher education a job creation program? Well, it may lead to more job creation. You may create entrepreneurs. You may create more educated workers, but that's not its specific goal. Just like building highways may create jobs, but that's not its specific goal. So we assembled a very large list of policies, made sure we understood them, and then drew a line where we thought the primary goal was to create jobs. So subsidies, an obvious one, grants and loans to businesses, an obvious one. And then we also include worker training that's very focused on particular jobs. There's a program that essentially invites employers to apply for funds to train workers for specific jobs, as opposed to running a generic program at a community college or something like that. And then similarly, there's entrepreneurship training programs, kind of a big deal in California, given our business culture, but really helping people start businesses among those who might not be as connected to the usual venture capital, high-tech startup part of the world. And that's where we drew the line. Then we did a very extensive search for what we knew about these programs, right? Did the state maybe cite some evidence that they worked? Had researchers done anything? Sometimes the states hired consultants to look at these programs. I would say, without overgeneralizing, those tend not to be as rigorous, at least as economists think about it. And then we kind of have a number of ways of summarizing the evidence. What are the programs? How much is being spent? Where we can tell, which we usually can, but not always. How solid is the evidence? Is there no evidence, even though there could be because it's been around for a while? Is there no evidence because it's a new program, which maybe isn't much of a criticism? Is there sort of adverse or mixed evidence that policymakers seem to be ignoring? Or is there actually rigorous evidence? And then we kind of summarize this in a number of different ways, and we end up saying, to sort of parrot our language, the state is flying partly blind, but not completely blind. That is, it's spending a good amount of money, maybe it's a little hard to know the exact total, but maybe a quarter of the total it's spending on these programs, on programs that seem to work. And maybe that's actually pretty good. We didn't do comparisons with other states. They're spending three-quarters of the money where we just don't know. And then finally, we end up trying to be constructive. Researchers always say more research is needed. I suppose that's in our interest, but it's also in policymakers' interest. So we instead of just making a blanket statement, we talk specifically about how programs might build in evaluation designs as part of the legislation, as part of the requirements. And we get pretty specific because there are actually some good examples in programs the state runs where these things have been mandated. And then conversely, there are some examples where if you read them quickly, it says, oh, it looks like they're mandating an evaluation, but then you kind of dig into what they're actually requiring program administrators to collect, and it wouldn't let you do an evaluation. So that may be the most constructive part, because it's one thing to say, let's do a new program and spend $100 million. That's not going to happen every day. But if you say, let's build in a requirement to evaluate the program and maybe work with outside researchers who will probably do this work for free as long as you give them access to the data, unlike consultants who, of course, want to get paid, you can probably get a lot of mileage and learn a lot about what's working and what's not.